"Don't get in the car." The shout cut through the parking lot like a siren. People froze. A man in a janitor's uniform was running, fear written across his face, pointing at a sleek black sedan as if it were dangerous. The driver paused, confused. No one knew why he was yelling. No one knew what he was trying to stop. But what happened next would leave an entire company shaken. Before we go any further, if you enjoy stories that remind you there's still real kindness and humanity in this world, take a moment to subscribe to True Kindness Tales. Like the video if this story moves you, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. The men shouting that morning was a single dad named Marcus, though almost no one at the company knew his name. To most people, he was just the janitor. The guy who emptied trash cans before sunrise, mopped floors long after everyone else went home, and stayed invisible by design. Marcus had learned a long time ago that staying quiet made life easier. Less attention meant fewer questions about why he sometimes looked exhausted, why his phone alarm rang at odd hours, or why he always rushed out the door the second his shift ended. Marcus's day started at 4 every morning in a small, aging apartment on the edge of town. The paint on the walls was chipped, the heater rattled all winter, and the couch had a broken leg he kept propped up with an old textbook. But to Marcus and his 6-year-old daughter, it was home. He'd gently wake her before dawn, help her into clothes laid out the night before, and whisper promises that today would be a good day. He packed her lunch with careful precision, even when money was tight, because it mattered to him that she felt normal at school. After dropping her off at a neighbor's place who helped with early mornings, Marcus drove straight to the corporate campus where he worked as a janitor. The building itself was impressive, all glass and steel, with manicured lawns and shiny cars lining the parking lot. Inside, executives hurried past with coffee cups and phones glued to their ears. Marcus nodded politely, always stepping aside. Some people smiled back. Most didn't notice him at all. He didn't mind being unseen. What he minded was being misunderstood. A few months earlier, Marcus's life had nearly fallen apart. His daughter's mother had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with grief he barely had time to process. Bills piled up. Sleep became a luxury. Some nights, he sat at the kitchen table staring at overdue notices, wondering how long he could keep everything together. But every morning, he put on his uniform, straightened his shoulders, and showed up. Because quitting wasn't an option. The company he worked for was run by a CEO named Daniel, a man known for his sharp instincts and no-nonsense leadership. To employees, he was distant but respected. He valued efficiency, results, and punctuality. His schedule was tightly controlled, his days packed with meetings, and his attention pulled in a dozen directions at once. He didn't know Marcus. He barely noticed the janitorial staff unless something wasn't done right. That changed on a Tuesday morning that began like any other. Marcus was finishing up near the executive wing when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He normally ignored personal calls at work, but something made him check it. It was a message from his neighbor. Short. Urgent. His daughter hadn't been feeling well at school, and the nurse couldn't reach him earlier. She'd developed a high fever and needed to be picked up immediately. Marcus's heart dropped into his stomach. He informed his supervisor as quickly as he could and rushed toward the parking lot, keys already in hand. His thoughts raced. He replayed every cough he'd heard that morning, every moment he might have missed something important. All he could think about was getting to his daughter as fast as possible. As he burst through the doors into the lot, he saw something that made him stop cold. His old sedan, the one he relied on for everything, was parked 2 rows away. But right next to it was a black luxury car, engine running, with the driver inside checking his phone. The angle was wrong. The space was tight. Marcus noticed the front wheel of the luxury car turned slightly toward his own vehicle, the gap between them dangerously small. And then he saw it. A dark, wet line spreading beneath his car. Gas. His car had been leaking fuel for weeks. He'd been patching it, hoping it would hold until his next paycheck. He'd meant to fix it properly. He just hadn't had the money yet. Panic surged through him. The black car's exhaust was close. Too close. One spark. One wrong move. Without thinking, Marcus ran forward, waving his arms and yelling, "Don't get in the car." People nearby turned, startled. Conversations stopped. The driver looked up, annoyed, confused by the janitor shouting at him. The driver was Daniel, the CEO. Security staff started moving toward Marcus, assuming the worst. To them, it looked like an outburst. A disruption. Another problem to handle. Marcus didn't care how it looked. His voice cracked as he shouted again, pointing at the ground, trying to explain through adrenaline and fear. He stumbled over his words, breathless, desperate. Daniel opened the door slightly, irritation flashing across his face, but then he noticed the crowd. He followed Marcus's shaking hand and saw the spreading fuel on the asphalt. The engine was still running. Daniel's expression changed instantly. He shut the car off and stepped back just as a security guard ushered him away. Facilities were called. The area was cleared. What could have been a serious accident was narrowly avoided. In the chaos that followed, Marcus stood there shaking, suddenly aware of how he must look. A grown man in a janitor's uniform, breathing hard, eyes wide. He expected to be reprimanded, maybe even fired. He kept apologizing, explaining about the leak, about his daughter, about not meaning to cause trouble. Daniel listened. Not the distracted listening he usually did in meetings, but real listening. He noticed the exhaustion in Marcus's face, the way his hands trembled, the fear that hadn't quite faded. He asked questions. He didn't rush. When Marcus mentioned his daughter, his voice softened. He explained why he'd been running, why he'd shouted without thinking. He admitted he was scared. Not for himself, but for his child and for what might have happened if the car had moved. Instead of dismissing him, Daniel surprised everyone. He told Marcus to take the rest of the day off. Then he asked if Marcus had a safe way to get to his daughter. Marcus hesitated, embarrassed. His car wasn't safe to drive. He didn't know what he was going to do. Daniel handed him his keys. The security guards exchanged looks. This wasn't something anyone expected. The CEO offered to drive Marcus himself. The ride was quiet at first. Marcus stared out the window, still processing everything. Daniel eventually spoke, asking about Marcus's daughter, about how long he'd worked there, about his schedule. The questions weren't intrusive. They were human. At the school nurse's office, Marcus's daughter looked up weakly when he arrived. Relief washed over her face. She reached for him, and he held her carefully, whispering that everything was okay. Daniel watched from a respectful distance, something shifting inside him. Later that week, Marcus returned to work expecting life to go back to normal. But it didn't. Daniel asked to see him again. This time, not in the parking lot, but in an office. Marcus sat nervously, hands folded, unsure what to expect. Instead of discipline, Daniel offered help. Not charity. Support. The company arranged to fix Marcus's car properly. His schedule was adjusted so he could better manage school pickups. A small emergency fund was quietly set aside for employees facing sudden hardships. No announcements. No press releases. Just action. Word spread slowly, not about policies, but about the change in atmosphere. Executives started greeting staff by name. Managers paid closer attention. People noticed each other more. Marcus noticed it most of all. He walked a little taller. He smiled more. He still worked just as hard, but now he felt seen. Valued. His daughter recovered quickly, proudly telling her classmates that her dad worked in a big building downtown and helped keep everyone safe. Months later, Marcus found a note in his locker. It was from Daniel. Short. Simple. It thanked him for speaking up that day, for not staying silent, for reminding him that leadership wasn't just about numbers or titles, but about people looking out for one another. That moment in the parking lot didn't just prevent an accident. It changed the way an entire company treated the people who kept it running. Kindness doesn't always arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes it shows up as a shout, a warning, a moment of courage from someone who could have stayed quiet. Marcus didn't think of himself as brave. He just acted out of care. And that care rippled outward in ways he never imagined. In a world that often rushes past the quiet workers, this story reminds us that every person has value, and every voice matters. The smallest act of looking out for someone else can shift perspectives, open hearts, and create lasting change. If this story moved you, think about the unnoticed people in your own life and how a little kindness might change their day. And if you've witnessed or experienced a moment like this, share it in the comments. You never know who might need that reminder today.